Welcome back, fight fans, to Theo MMA. We've got UFC 290 main card predictions. These are going to be some great fights. Leading it off, we've got a top UFC prospect in Bo Nickel, the undefeated 4-0 Bo Nickel, taking on Valentin Woodburn. This was supposed to be a fight with Tresean Gore, but Tresean Gore got a pretty nasty injury as well, kind of like the Sean Brady fight. So we aren't getting that fight. So we are getting Bo Nickel versus the 7-0 Valentin Woodburn. I'm not really seeing odds on this fight. What I've heard is probably like minus 2,500 for Bo Nickel. So either way, betting out of the option on this one. We know a lot about Bo Nickel. If you're a UFC fan, you know about Bo Nickel. Great wrestler, former Penn State collegiate champion. He poses a huge threat on the ground, but his striking has gotten him really good. And I'm not saying he's a world-class striker, but he can definitely hold his own on the feet. And he's gotten finishes on the feet. Valentin Woodburn, not a lot out there for Valentin Woodburn, but what I have seen is that he is kind of a bum rush kind of fighter. He's going to come in, he's going to try and knock you out, and then he's going to get tired and he's going to hold you against the fence. That style is not going to work with Bo Nickel. This should be an easy fight for Bo Nickel. If Woodburn charges him, as long as he doesn't get clipped and he gets too close, Bo Nickel's just going to take him down, and then Bo Nickel's going to hold him there, and Bo Nickel's going to submit him. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen. This fight is an easy fight to predict. This one's short and simple. I got Bo Nickel winning this by round 1 submission. That is a way you could bet this. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if that's at minus odds either way. I'm taking Bo Nickel to win this round 1 submission. We move into the next fight, another fight of the night contender. Lightweight division, you've got you've got Dan Hooker, 22-12, plus 185, taking on the Tarantula, Jalen Turner. Probably one of my favorite fighters right now. I love Jalen Turner. This should be, we'll get into this. They're both great strikers. You got Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker, who are both willing to trade on the feet. They're both, Turner, man, he is so long. He can land great kicks. And if that's the case, Dan Hooker's in some trouble on that. If he can just get kicked, if Turner can keep kicking at him, then he's in some definite trouble. What I do like about Dan Hooker has experience with some of the best fighters on the face of the earth, and he's held his own. His fight with Dustin Poirier is an all-time classic. It's one of my favorite fights of all time. And he's a better wrestler than Turner, but I really think that Jalen Turner is going to win this fight by a submission, and I'll tell you why. I think this is going to be a round 1 war where Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker go absolutely ballistic, beat the crap out of each other. Goes into round 2. They're both a little tired. They each have their moments, but Turner lands some good shots that kind of make Hooker definitely not anywhere near as confident in themselves or in himself. And that's when I think Hooker's going to shoot for a takedown, and it's going to be sloppy. And that happens all the time. And what happens, Turner catches people in that guillotine. I think he's going to do the exact same thing to Dan Hooker. Hooker's going to go for a takedown, and Jalen Turner is going to lock in that guillotine, and he's going to win this by a round 2 submission. Moving to the third fight on the main card. Former UFC middleweight champion and title challenger, whatever you want to call him, probably 1B in the division, second best fighter in the division behind Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, taking on the up-and-coming Dricus du Plessis. I've got a strong opinion on this fight, and I don't like this fight for the reason that I think it's almost an insult to Robert Whittaker. I think Dricus du Plessis is very overrated by the UFC. I don't know if he's overrated by the fans, but he's definitely overrated by the UFC. Whittaker has literally lost to no one but Israel Adesanya. So why we're giving him Dricus du Plessis, who has fought not great competition? He's got 3 wins over very mediocre UFC competition, then a win over Brad Tavares, which was a close fight that he almost lost. And then he fought Darren Till, who was just so in a mental block. Darren Till, that was a terrible showing. And then he fought a pretty washed-up Derek Brunson. And now he's fighting Robert Whittaker, who's shown nothing but the best out of himself. I've heard talks that Dricus is going to wrestle him. Dricus is not going to wrestle Robert Whittaker to a loss here. Dricus du Plessis is not a wrestler. He's a guy who has sloppy takedowns that grabs people's ankles. I I just don't think that's what's going to happen here. I think Robert Whittaker is going to just outclass him. I think Robert Whittaker could use some offensive wrestling in this fight. I see a easy 30-27, 30-26 Robert Whittaker decision. Unless Dricus catches him with a weird combo that drops Whittaker and wins by some fluky knockout, I just don't think that Dricus du Plessis is on the same tier level as Robert Whittaker. And for that reason, I'm taking Robert Whittaker by decision, and I think that's a lock, unless Whittaker even finishes him. But I'm going to go Robert Whittaker to win this fight by a decision. Probably the fight I'm most excited for, honestly, the UFC Flyweight Championship, Brandon Moreno giving his first title defense against someone other than Davison Figueiredo, against Alejandro Pantoja. Moreno 21-6-2, he's minus 205 favorite, versus Pantoja, who's 25-5 at plus 160. I mean, you know the story here, you probably know the story. Brandon Moreno and Alexandre Pantoja have fought twice before, and Pantoja is 2-0. Their first fight was on The Ultimate Fighter, 2-round war, Pantoja wins the fight. Then UFC, inside the UFC, Pantoja beats him again, takes his top 10 ranking, and Moreno's cut from the UFC. So there's some I'm not going to go with bad blood, but there's some history between these two. This was probably my closest fight on the entire card. Maybe Crute Manifield gives that a run for its money. But Moreno, I mean, since that first fight, I wouldn't put a lot on the first fight. Moreno showed so much improvement. And, I mean, if Moreno goes out, here's what I'm going to say. If Moreno goes out there and fights like he fought in his last fight entirely with that same drive and that same passion, I don't know if there's a guy at 125 who can come close to him, because that was so impressive. I mean, those fights with Figueiredo, they looked like equals. But that he did not look like an equal to Davison Figueiredo, and I don't think that's because of Davison Figueiredo. I think that's just how good Brandon Moreno was. But he's lost. I mean, there's always that thing that you say it comes like that Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira rivalry. He lost to the guy twice. And these weren't fluky wins. These were some dominant wins from Pantoja. But Moreno's well-rounded, and he relies on his striking a lot. But I think that's kind of a good thing in this fight. As long as he doesn't get leg kicked to death, he can strike with Pantoja. Bring it to Pantoja, though. He's on a 3-fight win streak, and his last fight against Alex Perez, I mean, it solidified himself as the number one contender. He looked absolutely incredible. He already has those 2 victories, like I said, and those leg kicks, those are some hard leg kicks to set up some good strikes. And he's got great grappling transitions. My official pick here, I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to say we're going to get a new flyweight champion. I'm going to go with Alexandre Pantoja to win this fight, and I think he's going to win it by a late round submission. Not late round, maybe like 3rd round submission. I think it's going to be a really good fight, but I do think those leg kicks are going to stifle Moreno. I don't think he's got great defense for them. And if that's the case, I think it shouldn't be too hard for Pantoja to get a takedown, and I do think those transitions, I think he's going to get his back. I think it's going to look a lot like Moreno versus Figueiredo, where Moreno got the submission, the rear naked choke. I think Pantoja's going to do virtually the same thing. I think he's going to come home with the UFC Flyweight Championship at UFC 290. And now we get into our UFC 290 main event, the UFC Featherweight Championship. Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. There's a lot of hype surrounding this fight, as there should be. Unification of the Flyweight Championship. But I don't think this is going to be the best fight on the card by any means. And if it is, these odds are not that great, because you got Volk as it's a 4-1 favorite versus Yair Rodriguez, who's almost a 3-1 underdog. If this is a banger, then this shouldn't be 4-1 favorite for Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski is going to fight how old school Volkanovski fought, and he's going to get past those kicks, and I think he's going to go for takedowns, and I think that's how he's going to win this fight. But if you want to look at it, you've got Volkanovski. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. It's either him or Jose Aldo as the featherweight GOAT. But Volk, he's not this big finisher, I would say. He's just a great fighter. He's gotten much better at striking. I mean, obviously, he outstruck Max Holloway, so he's got to be a great striker. And he's got great grappling, and he showed that against Islam Makhachev. And that's why I don't put a lot into that last Yair submission where he had against Josh Emmett. If he didn't get submitted by Islam Makhachev, I'll be shocked if he gets submitted by Yair Rodriguez. I think he spent a lot of time after almost getting submitted by Brian Ortega working on that submission defense. And I really do think that Volk is going to try and avoid that flurry by Yair. And Yair does not have good takedown defense. So if Volk can cut that distance off and he can get inside, I see no reason why he can't win this fight by a decision. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think they're going to have a little exchanges inside the pocket, and when Yair throws something too wild, he's going to get caught, he's going to get taken down, he's going to get put on his back, and that's where the rest of the round is going to end up. I think this is going to be kind of grit and grindy. I don't think this is going to be the best way to top off the night. I could be totally wrong about this, but this is just what I'm thinking. I just don't think this is going to be a banger of a fight. I think we see a Volkanovski masterclass with probably a 50-45, 50-44 style decision win, and he's going to retain that featherweight championship in preparation for an Aljamain Sterling fight, maybe, Ilia Topuria fight, maybe, something along those lines. But either way, I'm going out on Sandor Volkanovski. Thank you all for watching these UFC 290 picks and predictions. I had a blast making them. I'm going to be back next week. I would love to grow this channel, so thank you all so much for watching. I will see you next time as we prepare for UFC Fight Night Home versus Pennington. I'll come back and give a recap of how I did. We'll talk about what I got right. We'll talk about what I got wrong. And I will see you all in my next video.